welcome to another episode of Pack the Rock podcast. I'm your host, Audrey Marr, and I'm joined by Carlo Barone, Kylee Corman, and special guest Joe Brennan is with us today. Joe, thanks for coming on.
Of course. It's a fun week to come on. A lot of offense this past Saturday.
A lot to talk about. A little bit. We definitely have a lot to talk about. But first off, how's everyone doing?
Man, what a day it's been.
Yeah.
It's been a day.
I'm doing well. I'm a little bit more healthy than I was the last 2 weeks. So I'm starting to get good sleep again without NyQuil and melatonin. So that's always a win. I feel better now. So I will say this game did take a lot out of me, but we're here now talking about it.
We're here.
Are you sticking with the stash, Joe?
I guess so. I think it's got a little bit life left in it. But, Carlo, I'm glad you're getting some sleep.
Yeah, I needed some, man.
I've been having nightmares about that Indiana secondary all weekend.
All right. Well, yeah, definitely a lot to catch up on with this game. Joe, I'll start with you. You were on the call with WIUX. Let's get some takeaways from the game to start off.
Coming into the game, a lot of people kind of assumed that this would be a low-scoring game because you have Indiana, a team that hasn't eclipsed over 20 points more than, 2-3 times all year, and a Big Ten West team that doesn't have their starting quarterback. But John Paddock is not your run-of-the-mill backup quarterback by any means. I think what really showcased is that these were two of the third worst scoring defenses in the Big Ten coming into it, with Michigan State being the third. And they looked like it all day long. Paddock had himself a field day, 66% from the field, over 500 yards passing. And it's not necessarily because he did anything out of this world. Just the Indiana secondary without Noah Pierre. I mean, they really haven't been on the same page. It showed at moments against Wisconsin when they got those 2 touchdowns with men just wide open down the field. But that was all day long. Isaiah Williams just absolutely torched Indiana's secondary, going for 200 yards. He was just open every single time downfield. And to go along with that, you have 2 other receivers that have 99-plus receiving yards. Indiana just couldn't really find a way to stop them. You got to tip your cap to the offense. Sorsby did a fantastic job taking advantage of Xavier Scott. He was often targeted, whether it was Kobe, whether it was McCulley, who was on him often. Run game looks solid, but at the end of the day, your defense needs to step up and not allow 42 points in regulation.
I would be so upset if I was the offense. And I know that, this has been back and forth all year. The times that the defense has looked the best, the offense has lost the game, and vice versa. It goes back and forth between those two. But that was the best showing that we have seen from the Indiana offense. And, after last week, I don't know if we'll see another offense like that this season. I know that everyone's very defeated after that last game. Allen said hasn't been sleeping, he's been sick, which I guess if you're about to lose your job, that's what happens. But I know that this was a very bad loss, and probably, even though they had close games, they had tough losses, this might be the loss of the season. We'll see how the rest of these 2 games go, but...
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say this is probably their best offensive performance since 2020. I would argue. I can't remember another time that they put up 45 points. To allow 48 to a backup quarterback, a guy I saw on Twitter, he started at Ball State. He's a fifth, 6-year guy, whatever. He's on his last ride. His old family members used to play for Illinois. He kind of just transferred there. I feel like I can't tell his story, but transferred there out of Ball State. Wasn't anything special there. I think he was rated the 11th best MAC quarterback by Pro Football Focus. And then he goes out in his first start in Memorial Stadium for Illinois and throws for 507 yards, the most that any Illini quarterback has thrown for in 43 years. That is how you get your 7th loss and the season ends. If I'm Tom Allen, I'm not sleeping at all. I don't blame him because you don't have a job because of some no-name guy comes in and lights up your defense. It looked like those cornerbacks on the outside were straight burnt toast the entire game. It wasn't like they came in and they played. They had a good first defensive possession, 3 and out. And after that, I think it was almost touchdown every single time they got the ball. You're not going to win any game doing that. And it's crazy that they even got close to, because this offense, I think they were averaging or just under 20 points a game. You double that. Sorsby has 5 touchdowns alone, three passing, 2 rushing. He throws one pick, I'll say, but Paddock threw an even worse pick. He just took the ball and threw it like a duck, and it just went into Lou Moore's hands. I mean, you get an interception, basically a free interception. They go and score a touchdown, and there's just so many issues from the defense, and I can't believe. If you would have told me that they would lose bowl eligibility on a game against Illinois where they let up 48 points the week after they allowed 23 to Ohio State, who looks a much better team than Illinois, that's crazy. Because I cannot believe this defense. I can't believe they let up so many yards. I think over 600 total yards for the whole game. I mean, it's like you had middle schoolers out there playing football. And, I mean, Isaiah Williams, man, it's two weeks in a row he's had the game-winning catch. I mean, Illinois played their tails off. So did IU. I will say it was a great game to watch, and I was very happy to be on the field for the final 5 minutes in overtime. But, man, what an emotional game to lose and eventually basically end Indiana's season.
Yeah, I mean, to give up 662 yards, like for the Indiana defense to give up 662 yards after, like you said, playing like that and only allowing 23 points against Ohio State, I think that's crazy. But we'll move on. We'll talk about the defense a little bit later because there's a lot more to talk about on that end. But on the offense, obviously, you all mentioned it. It looks like this was the best that the offense has looked like throughout the entire season. I mean, even Donovan McCulley, too, he's really moved into that wide receiver 1 role. He had 137 yards, 2 touchdowns, both first in his careers. It looks like the offense is definitely clicking.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of been in that wide receiver 1 position for a while now. Even when Camper was playing, he really wasn't at his best. And McCulley, he's looked impressive, but wow, he looked real impressive on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it looked like he was either catching the ball every time or getting a flag, and sometimes even getting both. It was very, very impressive to watch. And I will say it was pretty much a one-man show for a really long time. I think he had over 100 yards even halfway through the second quarter. And like you mentioned, first multi-score game of his career. He looked, I would say he would be the best wide receiver out there, but honestly, I would put him like 3rd or 4th in this game just because of the crazy Illinois performances. But yeah, he's definitely the wide receiver 1 for this team going forward, and Sorsby and him are starting to get chemistry on that back shoulder fade, which you kept seeing the DBs tug at him because they knew he was doing that, and they still would get it off. He was either getting a flag or a catch almost every single time he was getting thrown the ball.
Yeah, McCulley's definitely made big strides in terms of what we saw last year, the beginning of this year, until the last 2 weeks. I feel like he's taken big steps, but he's really only taken those steps because he's had to. I mean, you come into this game, no Cam Camper, no Omar Cooper Jr. Who else on this offense do you have to throw to? DeKeith Carter's showing us flashes. E.J. Williams starting to finally find his rhythm and groove. But for me, it's really more about Sorsby and what he's able to do with the football. I'm sensing a lot more trust in Rod Carey and his system now that Walt Bell's moved on. And you got to realize this is Sorsby, who last year played with the scout team, Rod Carey, who was the scout team play caller last year. Now these two come together, and it really seems like a perfect marriage almost. They're just fitting together, and not only that, but now that the run game has taken another step, has really opened up the pass a lot. That's a big way that Indiana was able to establish the pass game, was with Howland. Howland, a guy also who's just kind of come on scene out of nowhere, a redshirt sophomore who's now making a huge impact. He's the go-to back, because a couple weeks ago we were talking about this Indiana team saying they need to stop feeding it to Lucas. I mean, everything is Jalen Lucas, Jalen Lucas, Jalen Lucas. It was him in the passing game, him in the slot, him in the flats, him in the run game, and now Henderson's back in it, and even though Henderson's there, I mean, they really only found success with Howland, who's proven to be a power back that can also bounce it to the outside, run around you, or run through you. And that's been big for Indiana. Do I love McCulley in the sense that if you threw him on another team in the Big Ten, would he be a wide receiver 1 on that team? Absolutely not. But is he the guy moving forward for Indiana for the rest of this year? Without a doubt. But that mainly goes just because there aren't any other options.
Trent Howland's interesting to me because he's someone that both Allen and Bell would bring up just about every single week as a player that has really impressed them. And he didn't start seeing playing time until, a week ago, 2 weeks ago? So I don't really know. I don't know if there was an injury. I don't know why they weren't playing him. But, I mean, they've said it from the beginning that he was good, I guess. I don't know.
I will say that was his performance Saturday was definitely his best game of the year, but also probably, I mean, I don't have the stats in my brain here, but definitely the most carries he's had. I would guess all year. I mean, 13, averaging 5.5 yards a carry. This is like the first time I would say that Indiana had a decent run game in a game, because usually you've seen it kind of just they'll try it, and then it won't work, and then they'll just pass every single time. And I mean, he was definitely effective. He got the touchdown. I believe that was either third or fourth down, but they were right there. He punched in, but.
And running it against this Illinois team isn't by any means. Isn't easy by any means. I mean, this secondary is terrible. Like, I need to emphasize that. This Illinois secondary is not good. That's why Indiana was able to have a lot of success in the passing game, but Indiana's just as bad. But Trent Halland able to have, over 5 yards of carry in this game against one of the best pair of nose tackles in the Big Ten and arguably in the entire country. I mean, they're nicknamed the law firm for a reason. They lay the law. These two guys were absolutely phenomenal this past week, but they mainly showed their ability to rush the passer from the inside. But Halland really, yes, he can go downhill, but his ability to get to the outside and Indiana's ability to run the read option with Halland and Sorsby has opened up this offense so much. I mean, we saw Walt Bell try and run this at the beginning of the year, and it was unsuccessful every single time. Now with Halland, defenses have to collapse on the inside because Halland can run it right in between the guard and the center and the two gap, or he can bounce it to the outside on a quick sweep. And Sorsby has the ability to move outside as well. He got one read option touchdown on his legs this week, one last week. It's just showing more and more success in the run game when you have a back that can move the ball and can, use a little bit of physicality. Henderson and Lucas are smaller guys. Halland's a bigger dude that can run through you.
Not to mention, Sorsby's not an easy tackle either.
No, he used to play running back.
He's a big dude.
He's a big dude. And that touchdown, I mean, there were, two guys on him, but they were tackling him high.
3 or 4.
Just shut him off, and he got another 10 yards, walked in the end zone, spiked the football down, looked at the crowd, said, "What's up?" That was a moment I was like, okay, Sorsby, you tell him, all right.
He's the quarterback of the future of this team.
I would agree.
Yeah. I don't know about this team.
I think next year, as of right now,
Another
he'd
team,
be
maybe.
No, there's
Why would he
No.
leave?
No, there's no way.
Because he could go somewhere where they're actually gonna freaking win.
But think about this. He's the bona fide.
Taven or Sorsby, one of them's got to go.
Taven's gone. Goodbye.
He'd have to sit a year.
That Jackson dream is
He's
gone.
not getting a waiver. I think Sorsby's gone. I know we're jumping the gun a little bit here, but maybe he stays, but I would not be surprised if he leaves.
But why would you leave? You're in a system that's perfect for you. You have the opportunities
to
that are
go
lined out for
somewhere
you.
that you're gonna win.
But you're
losing.
You're telling me that Alabama or some SEC school is going to call a quarterback whose team just won 3
Did
games?
I say that?
I'm just saying. I don't know a program that's necessarily going to be jumping at the opportunity to take Brennan Sorsby, who wasn't even a starter until halfway through this season. They were splitting reps literally until, week 7, week 6? Sorsby is a guy that's gotten more comfortable. Nobody's jumping at the opportunity to take a guy that's had 2 games over 250 passing yards.
I'll say this: he just won.
I've heard some things, but we can talk later.
he just won the job. I mean, he's been fighting for it all summer, all training camp, all now, and he just finally got it, and he's starting to get some steam. I don't see the value of him transferring away and have to fight for the job again. He doesn't want to compete. He wants to be the guy. He wants to be the leader of the team. And I think now is the first time in his career, I think this was second season in college football, that he's the bona fide guy, the leader of a Big Ten football team. And the team believes in him. I don't think he's going to transfer. I would be shocked if he transferred out of IU, especially because it's not like he's going to go up. Like Joe mentioned, you win, they're probably going to win 5 games this year at the most. It's not like there's going to be 10 schools, all Power 5, not even like Division I, foaming at the mouth over a guy that's started less than half the year and had a couple decent games.
And I would
like to say that that's not what I said.
No, I'm
putting
not.
that
I'm
out
not.
there.
Just,
No, yeah.
I know. I'm just saying. I don't think he's going to transfer.
I just think more often than not, with the portal being what it is and what it has been the last couple of years, I think more often than not we see the guy that's looking for a bigger opportunity that doesn't have a role with his team transfer than a guy that does have a solidified role and is looking for a bigger opportunity. I think Colorado kind of changed that to a certain degree. In women's basketball, we're seeing that a little bit with Haley Van Lith that transferred to LSU. So there's certainly cases of it. But, I mean, you're hearing more about the times that it happens when it doesn't, if that makes sense. You're hearing more about the quarterback that got benched, going all the way back to, like, Justin Fields, to Joe Burrow. These guys that are on the bench and think, I deserve a starting spot and don't have one, are more likely to go to programs where they think they can succeed.
Jalen Lucas.
I think that also goes back to the fact that, like, the comfortability factor between Rod Carey and Brendan Sorsby. Because the Brendan Sorsby that we saw with Walt Bell and the Brendan Sorsby that we've seen with Rod Carey are two completely different people.
Yeah.
So I think that completely goes back to that point. Honestly, like, there's a completely different factor. I think Taven Jackson had more of a comfortability with Walt Bell than he does with Rod Carey. Obviously, they've worked together for a longer amount of time. So I don't see him transferring. I see Taven with more of a chance than that, because also now Donovan McCulley, like, all of they're getting so much more comfortable with each other, and I think that's only going to grow, especially in the off season and maybe between these next two games too. But yeah, I don't see it at all.
The other guy that I would also put on kind of high alert of being afraid of transferring if I'm Indiana is Jalen Lucas, a guy that had a really big role in the offense. I don't know if he's happy or sad about that at the beginning of the year, but typically I think guys, when they get a lot of touches, they're a fan of it. They want to show what they've got. And his role in the offense is really diminished. I mean, this past week we talked about Trent Howland being the main back and Henderson coming back. Between those two guys, 23 carries for Lucas himself, 1 carry offensively. As a receiver, where they're putting him in the slot a lot, only 1 reception. So his roles started to diminish a lot. But if he wants to go to a program that can win, I see that argument a lot more. You put him on a Penn State. He's the return specialist. He's a guy you can throw in the slot. He's a third down back that you can implement in that offense and be extraordinarily successful. He's really not built for this Indiana team as much as they tried to force it. He could go somewhere else and be very well off.
But, okay, let's talk about... So, let's say Jalen Lucas, that's a high target to transfer. Donovan McCulley, if I'm him, I'm transferring.
I could definitely see him looking.
I think he'll look. He'll dip his toe in.
For sure.
But
And
didn't
I'm
he
willing
say
to
something?
bet. I'm willing to bet that he doesn't have to do too much looking. I would not be surprised if a few people have already reached out to him. So if he's gone, if Jalen Lucas is gone, you're losing Henderson. You're losing Turner. You're losing a few offensive linemen. The offense collapses very quickly, and that is a young offense, not experienced as a quarterback. I don't know. That kind of changes this. So there's that to think about, too.
At the same time, the portal goes both ways.
Yeah.
So we've seen Indiana make a couple of small splashes so far. I think E.J. Williams is kind of at the top of that list when I think of big transfers that we were able to land. But I think if McCulley keeps the role that he had this past week and the week before at Wisconsin, that progresses. I think if you're getting 11 receptions and 15 targets per week, why would I transfer? Especially if I have a quarterback that I have chemistry with, if the offensive scheme is built around me. It's not necessarily always worth the risk of losing your role going to a bigger program. Now, if Indiana is able to do some recruiting, if Tom Allen can entice a couple of guys to transfer from big programs that aren't necessarily getting a big opportunity, and McCulley's role then goes away, I think he, without a doubt, takes a look at the portal because he sees, I can be the go-to guy at a smaller school. I can be a go-to guy at maybe not a Power 5 school, but if you look at a Group 5 school, he could be the go-to guy and he could get great looks.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that it's definitely a big conversation point. But I want to touch on one more point in the offense. A big controversy. Everything looked good, but I wouldn't say a controversy, which was seen, was the overtime play calling. And that,
oh boy.
Yeah, so, oh boy, let's just get...
Licking my chops at this question.
You want to take it then?
I'll start.
Okay.
Let's just say, did they not learn a single thing about Penn State? Did they forget that game because they did the exact same thing this week and eventually cost them their season? I mean, down 3 to Penn State, 3 I think they run it 3 times in a row, kick a field goal. First overtime, you've seen Illinois score a touchdown on almost every single drive they've had the entire game. The mindset should have been, we're scoring a touchdown and we're extending this game. But that just was not the case. 2 of those runs, quarterback design, like, come on. Did y'all not learn anything at Penn State? I don't get it. And I mean, it cost them the season. When they kicked the field goal, I was like, well, there's the game.
I think they had to have been thinking a little bit about Akron when it was back and forth for 4 overtimes. But, I mean, you're exactly right. They saw that at Penn State, and the way that the defense had been playing, they had to have known that Illinois is getting a touchdown.
100%.
So, okay, fine. You run it 3 times. You're either going to lose by 7 or you're going to lose by 4. So just go for it. A loss is a loss. At least people might give you a little bit more credit if you go for a little bit riskier play call in that situation, in my opinion. Your season's on the line. Your defense
looks like Swiss cheese.
That's just, I mean, I'm not a play caller. I'm not a play caller for a reason, but
you would have called it better 3 plays. I would have told you that, Kylee.
Offensive play calling wise, I think on that last drive of regulation, Indiana didn't run the ball once with one of their running backs. And you saw how you could move the ball downfield. Granted, the quarterback design draw did work twice in that drive, but I think a big part of that is you're having Illinois play off so much because they're preventing the deep throws that the field opens up a lot. And once that happens, you see daylight, go off to the races, get the first down. I don't love the idea of running it on second down and just pushing it. Once you see the run isn't working on first down, you don't get a chunk of 3 or 4. I think you go back to the air, especially after you saw what your quarterback can do for you. Late in the game, high pressure situation, back against the wall, able to drive it downfield. Trust your quarterback. There's a reason he's starting and you're not splitting carries anymore at the helm. So offensively, I think that was a bad decision from Rod Carey and company, and I think he knows that and said immediate regret in the post-game press conference. On the defensive end, I love the play calling. I thought it was phenomenal, especially you get in 3rd and 6, you bring heat, have Aaron Casey on Paddock's tail, trying to take him down to the backfield. But, I mean, once again, it just goes down to the secondary. You get one of those scramble drill kind of plays, and Isaiah Williams, who's second best receiver in the Big Ten, just kind of squirts away and able to find the end zone. Offensively, you hate it, but, you know, personally, I think they made the right call by kicking for 3, just because if you give it right back to them, they can have a 3 and out. Your defense could theoretically get a great stop, and then they just have to line up for a 42-yard field goal and ice the game. But obviously, in hindsight, you wish you had gone for 7 and wish you'd won the coin toss.
I think the decision to bring pressure on 3rd down was definitely a good one. But the minute he got outside the pocket and you got more people in the backfield chasing the quarterback than you do guarding the receivers, I mean, the way the game was going, that's hard.
But if Casey's able to just dive,
it's
lunge,
a different game.
get an ankle, I mean, they're backed up. It was 3rd and 6. You theoretically call it what, like a 8-yard sack?
Yeah.
So you're at 2nd and 14 at the 29-yard line. That's a 39
well, you'd be
plus 7.
4th and 14.
That's like a 45-yard field goal.
That's not an easy kick.
It's not. 42 is a little bit easier, but once you back it up, that kicker, I think he was what, like 1 for 2 on the year from 50+ with a long of 53. From 40+, he was like 2 for 5 coming into the game. So not necessarily the most reliable kicker in the world. So it would have really changed the whole feeling of the game right there just off one play. But obviously a game of inches.
Mm-hmm. You have Donovan McCulley and the way that he had been playing. I mean, just about every single play he was involved in, he either drew the flag or he made an incredible catch. So why you've got 3 guaranteed chances? Why not just
throw all 3?
Yeah.
I think
no, just at least one of them. Just see what you can get.
I actually will go that, and I'll say they should have thrown it all 3. Not only do you have Donovan McCulley going off like you're saying, Kylee, I mean, he was winning the matchup with Xavier Scott all day long. He was able to stack him off the line, able to get separation, get his hands free. But also, I mean, what was it? Beginning of the fourth quarter, end of the third quarter, Taz Nicholson got ejected from that game.
Yeah.
It was their go-to
Spitting on
corner.
the player.
Yeah, he spit on E.J. Williams. Like, that's a time your best corner's out of the game. Your number two guy, your go-to nickel corner's been getting torched all day. I'd be afraid of the pass. And Indiana just runs it right into the law firm, and those guys lay down the law, and Indiana just couldn't move the ball, and it costed them.
Not to mention, you saw what he did with 50 seconds, no timeouts, all pass plays, and they get a touchdown, and the 2-point, which was also a pass play. I'm baffled that they did that twice this season with the game on the line.
I don't know, like, I think that was one of the key problems when Walt Bell was the offensive coordinator, was how much they used the run game. And again, goes back to the point of, like, did you learn nothing? I don't know.
Like, actually.
Yeah, so obviously I think we've seen more success when Brendan Sorsby is throwing the ball. And yes, his run game is great as well. I mean, he had 17 carries and 2 touchdowns in the run game. But it does just go back to the point of really how much success that Rod Carey has brought in the passing game. But a lot of defensive points were also brought up in that. So we have a lot to talk about on the defense. In your opinion, is this the worst that the defense has looked all season?
I think so. I said last week that I was impressed with the people, like the younger guys that had been stepping up in the absence of, 2-3 weeks ago when Noah Pierre got out, Dunham got out, and then Lou Moore was ejected. There was a lot of guys that stepped up, and they stepped up against Wisconsin. They won that game, and I was like, yeah, I said you can either fail or you're going to rise up to the challenge. And up to that point, I felt like, all things considered, they had rose to the challenge, but oh my God, no one wanted to make any kind of game-saving play that whole game.
As much as we've talked about him on this pod, Aaron Casey was as quiet as ever on Saturday. I mean, he's usually a really good run stopper, but those gaps that those Illini offensive linemen were making, I mean, you could have driven a car, like, not even touching the gas and scored a touchdown almost every time. I mean, it's like they couldn't stop the run, they couldn't stop the pass. It was like every play was getting 10 yards. Would you guys believe if I told you that Illinois was 3 of 10 on third down? And
That's crazy.
And still scored 48 points. You know what that tells me? Gap plays, big plays. If you notice that it was sometime in the first half, one of their receivers just ran behind the defensive back. The guy just stood there like his controller died. I mean, the guy was wide open, and there was no safety, and they got like 50 yards, and then I don't know what the result of that drive was, but they got all the way down from when the drive started, was the first play, all the way to inside the Indiana 5-yard line in one play because some guy just decided to not play coverage. I mean, they talked about it after the game, many miscommunications that the defense had. It's week 10. You're still having these miscommunications. They're having guys wide open, free 50 yards, free scoring plays. Like, that's not a bowl team, and they don't deserve to go to a bowl after a defensive performance like that. That was, I mean, like I said, as good as Casey has been, as good as his defense was last week against Wisconsin, what a terrible showing. It cost them their season, and it cost them their bowl hopes. Honestly, you throw any game that IU scores 45 points in, I mean, they're winning that game almost every single time unless you're playing a team like Ohio State. But if you're scoring 45 against Ohio State, that's a whole different story. You score 45, you average like just under 20 a game. That's double what you have. I mean, I think they have 27 points at halftime. When was the last time they scored 20 in a game at all? And your defense just absolutely just does not show up. Like, what an awful performance. You guys got to keep in mind, Tom Allen is a defensive-minded coach. Defensive-minded, season on the line, 48 points.
Yeah, Carlo, I hear your point, and I definitely think the second level was a big concern for Indiana, but mainly because they had to make up for what was lost in the secondary. If you look at the safeties, I think it was a great performance by Moore and Dunham, but aside from that, I mean, whoever they threw out there, whether it was Toomer, whether it was Sharp, whoever it was, they just couldn't find a way to win one-on-one matchups. And along with that, it's not like Indiana had any pass rush to help them out. Only 1 sack on the day. They just couldn't get by Illinois' offensive line, which isn't a phenomenal offensive line by any means. I mean, they were able to create run lanes. They were able to hold the pressure in the passing game. They were able to just really control the line of scrimmage. And when you win the battle in the trenches, you really win on every other level. And it just builds off of each other. I think the team defense overall, without a doubt, was the worst I've ever seen it watching Indiana football. But
that's a lot. That says something.
But at the same time, it's not like it was a poor performance by everybody on the field. But when your secondary is just getting balls thrown over the top, when you can't find a way to stop and they can just do home run ball after home run ball, you bring up that Lewis, no, it wasn't, Isaiah Williams completion. I mean, it was that wasn't the designed route he was supposed to run. He had Sharp lined up him on the outside at the numbers. Paddock took the snap, and then Sharp just came inside like it was a corner blitz. It wasn't. There was no safety top over the help. There was no safety help over the top, and they were able to just quickly look over to him, have him run a seam route, and rack up 64 yards. It was unbelievable, and stuff like that has just become a commonality between this Indiana secondary the last 2 weeks. Without Noah Pierre, they just really have no idea what they're doing out there.
Not to mention, I don't think they prepared for Paddock as much as they want to say they did.
No.
You heard on Tom Allen's radio show, he was very confident that Allmeyer was going to play. And when Paddock came out there, I don't think they were like, oh my gosh, he's going to throw for 500 yards today, and that's what would end up happening.
No one could have predicted that.
I don't even think he thought he was throwing them for over 300, but they definitely, 1,000%, whatever they want to say, they definitely didn't prepare for him.
And I don't even know if they prepared for Reggie Love. This is a guy that hasn't played in over a month. Came in, Fagan, true freshman, was the lead back, rated a great running back, averaging 4.7 yards per carry coming into the day, but he only got 8 rushes, something like that. He was definitely under 10. They give it to Love, and he had himself a field day. It was unbelievable. Nobody could stop him.
Just running behind a car, it looked like.
Yeah.
With how big those holes were. I mean, I was in the bathroom for that one really long touchdown, but I could hear it while I was washing my hands and stuff, and that was rough, man. I heard it was just wide open. I mean, the Illinois announcers were just roasting the IU line too. They're like, "Oh wow, look at the hole! He goes on the sideline untouched, touchdown."
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. I will say you can't really prepare for someone when you don't know that they're going to get injured and like leave the game. But yeah, I think it does definitely go into preparation. I agree that they didn't prep for Paddock, but I think. Yeah, it all comes down to preparation. Obviously, this might be the worst loss that Indiana has seen in a very, very long time. Now that they lose bowl eligibility, what does the rest of the season look like for this team?
At this point, you're just playing for pride. Like, I mean, you'd like to show that you can beat the bottom of the barrel in Michigan State. And then, obviously, the Purdue game means something for everybody on that team.
If you can't beat the bottom of the Big Ten West, you got a problem. They mentioned it after the game because they got asked about motivation. Like, you know, you guys are out of bowl eligibility. You guys have talked about this all year. And now you guys are officially out. Like, what's the motivation? You got 2 games left. Like, what are you guys playing for? And everyone said, we got 2 trophy games, 2 rivalry games, Michigan State and Purdue. And yes, Purdue is a rivalry game, and that one means if both teams are 0-11, that game is each team's Super Bowl. And I would argue it's both their Super Bowls this year. But, I mean, that game's always going to have pride. But playing against this team, I mean, they play Michigan State this weekend. They're getting a short Thanksgiving break because of it. I can sense that the motivation, I wasn't there at the press conference today or anything, but their motivation's got to definitely be down the drain, especially with how emotional this game was. I mean, back and forth affair. IU had a big lead, blew it. Illinois comes back. I mean, they could have won the game on 6 tries in the last 5 minutes. They kick field goal to only go up 8, so then IU's technically still alive. And they get the touchdown. They get the 2. They go to overtime. It's just a roller coaster of emotion. And then, you go up in overtime, and then you go down, and you lose in the final play. You walk it off. Everyone in the stadium's going crazy. I saw Jamari Sharp run the locker room faster than he ever ran to go chase down anyone in Illinois that day. He was the first one there, and I don't blame him because I would show my face after that performance. But yeah, I mean, a roller coaster game. I wouldn't be surprised if they come out flat against Michigan State, to be very honest, because you've seen these emotional games. I mean, you take a look at Colorado. I mean, they win a very close game against Colorado State, which was you could argue was also a roller coaster affair against a team much worse than them. I don't know if you can say it at this point, but anyway, it's a roller coaster affair. And then they come out the next week and they look flat. I mean, with these emotional games, it takes a lot of emotions out of you. A lot of you're putting everything into it, and I'm sure IU's putting everything into every game they have at that point. And then you go out and you lose to a game against a backup quarterback. Starting running back goes out in the first half, and they put up 600 total yards on you. If I'm someone on defense, not named Aaron Casey, I have no motivation going forward because there is absolutely nothing to play for. It's not like anyone in that defense other than Aaron Casey has any chance of going to the draft. As much as we could, being honest here, I don't really know how much motivation you have to keep going. You're missing out time with your family. You haven't had a lot of time at all because you've been playing for this team the whole time. And now that you kind of see the end goal or go away with a bowl game, it's just, it'd be hard. Personally, if I was on the team, it'd be hard to stay motivated.
Yeah, I think pride is all you really have. I mean, like I said earlier, there is a lot of guys that this is it for them. And a lot of guys have been playing for 6 years. And that's just a chapter of their life. As you said, not many draft prospects from this team, but I mean, that's a closed door right there. So, I mean, for a lot of people, it's give it all you got for one last time. But then all the younger guys, if I'm a younger guy, I'm either staying with the team, still planning on playing football, and I don't want to get hurt. That's a big thing. Maybe that's just what I think about because I'm always getting hurt. I'm almost at a year without a surgery, guys. Let's see if we can keep it up.
I don't have a wood knock on, but I would.
But there's that, and then also, gosh, I kind of lost my train of thought there. But if I'm a younger guy, I don't want to get hurt, and maybe I'm going to a transfer portal. Maybe I don't want to risk anything. Like, why do I care? I still have 3-4 years of football left. What's 2 more games?
Yeah. Well, that will close out our Illinois discussion. Definitely, yeah. This will definitely be a game to look back on, I think, for many, many, many weeks, seasons to come, maybe. But we're going to head into some Michigan State predictions. Make sure to stay tuned for later this week when there will be another episode released to go into a deeper dive of Michigan State this weekend. But first, let's start off. What does Indiana need to fix to bounce back in this game?
The secondary. Like
secondary.
If you could fix the secondary, so many issues are fixed with it. If you can just keep the quarterback contained in the pocket for an extra second and a half, your pass rush is going to get better. You're not going to have as much stuff go over the top. I mean, the offense was phenomenal. If they can even do an ounce of what they showed last week and the week before, I really like their chances against Michigan State. You just can't let Michigan State beat you this bad. I mean, you really just need to find a way to slow them down.
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to just prepare for the Michigan State offense and have a game plan that they're going to stick to because their defense last week, they looked – when you have communication issues this late in the season, that is a big problem, and that's not the players. That is the coaches. I mean, like I just ranted about motivation – I think they're going to come out. They're definitely going to play a worse game than they did Illinois. Not defense-wise. They can't get worse than that. I'll say that. But offensively, I don't think they're going to throw another 48 or 45 points, rather, on Michigan State. But Michigan State's their offense is one of the scoring offenses that's actually worse than IU. So it's going to take 3 touchdowns from the win. I think offensively they'll be fine. It's just whether their defense is going to show up like they did against Wisconsin, or if they're going to show up like they did, or actually not show up against Illinois. So what they need to do is they need to come out strong. Like I've said a couple times this year on this pod, this team is built to play with a lead. They're definitely not built to come back from a deficit. So I think they're going to have to start out strong. And honestly, if they start out strong, I think that'll just boost morale overall, which I'm sure right now is probably down in the dumps just because their season's essentially over in 2 weeks. But I think they're going to have to come out strong and play a better first half. I mean, they played a pretty good first half last week until the last couple minutes when they allowed those touchdowns. But I think they're going to have to come out and start strong just to get everyone's morale back up.
Yeah, I don't think there really is a bounce back. I mean, the season's over. It is what it is. What are you winning these next 2 weeks? You're winning bragging rights. And if I was them, I would have much rather won an opportunity at a bowl game. But that's what you got now. I think, if they decide to show up, the defense obviously needs to get it together. But again, if I'm them, why should I? I'll save it for next year and just move on.
A lot of it, though, is playing for the future. Because if you're a Big Ten team that has shown progress over the last 3 years, let's take out 2020 and look at since then. Indiana has really struggled in the Big Ten. I mean, last year you get 2 wins over Illinois and Michigan State. The year before, I don't think they won any.
They didn't.
Yeah, so you can show we're making progress, the program's moving in the right direction. If you're a 3-win team versus a 5-win team, there's a few more recruits in the mix or a couple of transfers that you can land that you wouldn't have if you lose these next 2 games. And Michigan State is bad. Like, we're talking about, we need to prepare for Michigan State's offense. They don't have one. Like, this Michigan State, their most impressive win is against the University of Richmond. Shout out, Go Spiders. Love those guys. But they are not good. I'd give you guys $20 if you could tell me which division they're in, which conference, and another team in there. I mean, it is bad.
I will say, though, I do think if they win out these next 2 games, I think Tom Allen has his job saved.
I would argue if he wins one of them.
I think he has it. I think he has it. Just purely based off the buyout. Obviously, we've seen other big schools with big programs recently. Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher at the top of that list.
$4 million?
72.
Unbelievable.
That is crazy.
Unbelievable. But Indiana necessarily, like, with the athletic program that's structured, with the funding, with all the alumni, they're not going to dump a bunch of money into football. I mean, we have the most losses out of any team in the FBS for a reason. We are purely dedicated to being a basketball school, and I just don't see those funds being allocated to bring in Ed Ogeron or Deion Sanders or whoever it may be. I just don't see a coaching change until that contract expires.
Yeah, well, I mean, you said that Michigan State is like the worst offense, but my next question was going to be, if there is anything that Indiana needs to watch out for on this Michigan State team, what would it be? If you could all point out anything. Nothing?
Honestly, I'm not going to act like I've done my research on Michigan State, but I mean, looking at their schedule, man, they 49-0 to Michigan. I understand it was 52-7 for IU, but you put up a donut, like that's not good. I mean, 16 on Iowa is not too bad, but they still lost by 10. I mean, they did play Rutgers better than IU did. They only lost by 3, but they 38-3 against Ohio State last week. They put up 20 against Michigan. I will say all IU is going to need to do is get 3 touchdowns, and then this game is you can tie it with a bow pretty much, unless their defense decides to show that they're a bunch of kindergartners again, and then we have a different story. But I mean, Michigan State's. Right now, going into this game, Michigan State's offense is worse than IU's, and I'm pretty sure their defense is also. I don't know that stat, but I think IU should definitely, the way their offense is playing right now, they should be able to win this game.
Their defense was a tad better than Indiana's. You're kind of right around the same place until last week when you have 600 yards and 48 total points.
What's the update stat on that?
Indiana allows 30 points per game, which is the second worst behind Purdue.
What's Purdue averaging?
31.1.
Okay, shut up,
Can
Purdue.
someone pull up the image of the Battle of Mid?
This will certainly be a battle of mid.
Did you guys see they're giving out free student tickets?
For
to everyone.
They should be paying the
Really?
Michigan
For
State.
Michigan
No, but
State.
don't they usually do that though for breaks? Because I think they did that
Well, not
last year.
basketball.
They better do it for Kansas.
Yeah, they wouldn't do they would not do that for basketball.
I
Yeah.
feel like I'd rather go to the Michigan State game than the basketball Kansas game, just because it might be an Indiana win in one of them.
Yeah,
No,
geez.
this is a Michigan State team that averages 17 points a game and gives up 27 points per game. It's a very winnable game for Indiana. I think the 3 touchdown mark is right on the nose, Carlo. I think if Indiana, I think they will. I think they'll put up, 24, 28, 31 even points on the day. Michigan State's offense, I don't think they can keep up. Granted, if Indiana's secondary plays the way it did this last week, but I would be very surprised if there aren't any adjustments